Hi, everyone, and welcome to La Frontera, a podcast dedicated to exploring the dynamic startup and venture capital ecosystem in Latin America and the innovators behind it all. We're your hosts, Cyrus and Tom. If you enjoy this conversation, we invite you to subscribe to our newsletter where we announce new episodes and share additional insights and resources for founders and investors alike. We'd also like to invite you to share this podcast with your friends and to leave a review on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube to help more people discover the show. We love hearing from our audience. You can connect with us on LinkedIn and Twitter by searching for La Frontera Podcast. Hey folks, this is Cyrus. Today's episode will be a little different from our usual conversations. This episode is a tribute to Ali Jamal, founding partner of First Chick Ventures, who suddenly passed away in July 2025. Ali was not only a respected investor and builder, but also a generous friend and mentor to many. Over the past few weeks, I've had the privilege of connecting with investors and founders who knew Ali and were kind enough to share their memories with me. This isn't a comprehensive collection. Those who knew Ali understand that his impact stretched across continents and communities, but it's an honest attempt to honor the legacy he leaves behind. The idea for this episode came out of a conversation with my friend Ethan Austin as we reminisced about our memories of Ali. It felt right to create something that could help preserve and share Ali's legacy. My hope is that these stories remind us of the kind of person Ali was, bringing you as much joy as they did to me when I first heard them, and inspire us to carry forward the spirit he brought into every room. First up, we have Alex Zorychta, managing partner at Not Yet Ventures. Alex, how did you first meet Ali?
I met Ali through a group chat we have that a couple of the emerging managers are in. I think it was put on by Ihar from Geek Ventures. We have a monthly call, and I reached out to Ali one-on-one, actually, just to get to know him. And of course, he was very responsive. So we had that one-on-one call. And Ali, in particular, was like 15 minutes ahead or so of me. He was very similar focus on early stage kind of founders, a very small first fund. And I considered him to be the closest model to like where I should be going with it. And so, yeah, that's how I met him.
Do you have any memories or stories of Ali that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I have a couple. So I was lucky enough to meet him in person with actually a couple of the other emerging managers at this conference in Atlanta last September, the Opal Emerging Managers Summit or whatever. And we got to talk more in person, but really it wasn't until kind of the after conference where there was one after party that was at someone's house like 45 minutes away. And I got to sit next to Ali on the bus ride and got to know him even better. And it was so interesting because we were talking about fundraising and he said he hated fundraising and that he was bad at it, which was crazy because he had just been talking to me just casually about all the amazing facts really about how many companies he had been in, the markups so far, and like on average, the markups, and what founders were saying about him. And I was just sitting there and I was like, you're actually one of the best fundraisers I ever met. If I had money, I would absolutely be an LP. Right. And so it was just so funny that like someone who was, in my mind, finding so much success could have the same kind of doubts about himself that I was experiencing right in my own journey. And it was that moment, I think, that helped me in my journey with the blind faith that you need in order to keep pushing forward to get that first fund closed. Another memory was that after this after party on the bus ride back, we had all had a few drinks and karaoke started out. And you may hear some other stories from some of the other ones where, I think he was singing, I Think We're Alone Now, in his beautiful angelic voice, right? And so we knew that we needed to go to karaoke, find a place in Atlanta to go to karaoke. And we were looking around different places, and I called one of my friends who had lived in Atlanta for a while, and he's like, you have to go to Johnny's Hideaway. They got the best karaoke. So we all planned to go to Johnny's Hideaway for karaoke. But once we got there, we realized that it wasn't karaoke night at Johnny's Hideaway. It was actually disco dancing night. They had a huge disco ball with the little scattered light things going around. There was playing ABBA and all these amazing dance hits from the disco era. And Ali got up and was like tearing it up on the dance floor. And all the women in the entire bar were like dancing with him. And it was just a side that I'd never seen from Ali and none of us had seen. And it was a lot of fun. I don't even like to dance. And like here I was up there with him doing that. And he's very agile, right? An excellent dancer. It's just something that we wouldn't think about. It's brought us closer, and he brought up the fun that, I don't know, like a few people I've ever met would do that. And then another experience I had with him was most recently, I had reached out to him because he had a kind of a major LP that I was considering bringing into my fund. So I asked him, hey, what's the best way to approach this? Are they actually good as an LP? And of course, when I reached out to meet with him, he immediately responded and was basically available like the next day to talk about this. And he was very open and forthcoming and authentic. And then that conversation turned into, this was at the end of May, this kind of conversation turned into, he was talking about burnout, right? And it's something I've been experiencing, once you get to the top of the end of Fund 1, right? You experience this like major burnout. A lot of founders experience a lot of stress because you work hard, and he was like me in that what he likes to do for fun is meet early stage founders and help them succeed. But when that's your work, it can be a little bit like that. So we had discussed this and what it feels like, and we'd resolved to become accountability buddies. We were going to check in like a month and try different strategies and sort of see where we were at. And so the week after that, I took some time off, just totally unplugged from email and LinkedIn. And it was a week after that we heard the news that he was no longer here, right? And so it just was, I mean, it's that most of all, that even though I didn't know him for a very long time, it's that which shook me the most, because I don't know what happened to him, but I would hope that, the stress is a factor. And if there's one thing that I think a lot of people need to be aware of, is that you need to take care of yourself first. And I don't know, it's just, we were going to be accountability buddies until she's not here. So yeah, anyways, Ali was a really great person, and I think a guiding light for all of us in the VC community.
So what stands out to you about Ali, and what was his impact on the ecosystem?
I mean, probably something you're going to hear a lot is just how humble he was and unassuming, right? You start talking with him, and he doesn't come out. He's not the first person to talk. He's often listens first, and he's the one asking questions. And it isn't until you start asking him about things that like you're like, oh my God, this guy is amazing. He's very accomplished, and yet doesn't like to speak of his accomplishments. We've already said that he was always available, instant responses for people. He really made time for people who needed him. And I think the way that he talked about his fund, like I learned so much about this casual way of fundraising, which I think totally changed my approach for fundraising for funds. It was no longer, let me like put up a presentation and try to present some persona version of myself. Let me just tell you the facts about, hey, we got these companies, and oh, this is what happened, and here's a story about this founder, and here's what I'm excited about for the future. Just straight up facts with no like spin or polish on it. That's, I think, what Ali taught me most of all. But he also had this relentless commitment, I think, to authenticity, which is something that this is why I got into the game, I guess, of VC, is I never wanted to come in from the side of just to be a VC, just to work with, being that gate, that I have the money, you're the founder, you're gonna go through my pipeline, and then we're gonna invest in you or not, and then we won't talk to you again. It's I want to do this because I want to be that person who, even if we're not going to invest in you, I want to give you a leg up to get you on your path to go somewhere. And so being authentic in every single interaction, even when it may to be to your detriment, right? Because you could spin it in a way that could be more positive. And if I've learned anything along this journey, it's that it takes a huge amount of effort and cost to stay true to principles like that. And I think Ali, he was never about the BS. He was always about, let's do this the right way in every interaction that we had. And I think this is what led to some of the stress, is because when you are the person who is standing for those principles, standing tall among a sea of people who maybe are doing something a little bit different, right, to get views on social media or whatever, like, you can feel lost and you can feel stressed out, and you don't realize that you're standing for something that other people are watching you, right, and wanting to follow in your footsteps, even though you may not feel like you're having an impact. I wish that Ali knew. I hope that he knew that he really was this guiding light that all of us were following. I wish we had more time with him. Like we were just getting started. Like, honestly, one of the things that he was like, he said, I spent all my time on calls. I live in San Juan, but I actually haven't really been out and done anything yet.
Next up, we have Mike Ma, managing partner of Sidecut Ventures. Mike, how did you first meet Ali?
Yeah, I met Ali. It was randomly, I think, on a deal sharing call, and he just introduced himself at First Check Ventures. And I always thought, man, that guy's really smart when he was presenting and talking about his thesis. And I was an angel, kind of at another fund, thinking about starting my own fund and just talking about it. And he was just so, yeah, dude, like, you want to meet? I mean, that wasn't he's not a yeah, dude guy, but he said, yes, I'd love to meet. How do I help? Wanted nothing, just told me about himself, told me about his fund. and was just, yeah, whatever you need, I'm happy to help. I love being able to collaborate and find stuff. And then that was how I met him. And I guess it was 20, I don't know, those post-COVID years are very hard. But that was how I knew him as a mentor. And he was doing all of his investments. And he just opened up his playbook and just said, hey, here, I'm happy to tell you how I think about things. And then it just also, just so fascinating. Wait, you're an Indian guy in LATAM. Like, wait, how does this work? I just wanted to hear his story. And, all the words made sense, but you just realize, God, that is a really unique, amazing individual. And then over the years, we just kind of stayed in touch, and that was how I first met. And yeah, that's how I first met him. And that was the pretext, just generosity and, hey, yeah, happy to talk. Wanted nothing, no reason to take my meeting whatsoever, and just did. And we just became virtual friends from there.
Do you have any memories or stories of Ali that you'd like to share?
Yeah, this is the one I put on LinkedIn. And so we're both part of, once I closed my fund, and we were both part of Bridge Funding Global, we got in. And which Bridge Funding Global, for those who know, is a LPGP matching and sort of a service accelerator, ecosystem builder. And, there's an application process. They say they take the top, I forget, 10, 15, 20%. I can't remember what the number is, of GPs backing, and they want to support underrepresented founders and GPs. And there was an onboarding call, and I was on the thing with Bridge, and the gentleman is a guy named Amin from Bridge. And then Ali comes on. I was like, oh, I was like, I look at Amin on the Zoom. I was like, I thought you said you only got the best GPs. Like, honestly, what is this guy doing here? This is supposed to be an elite institution. And then Amin, he doesn't know me. He doesn't know Ali. He's like, you two know each other, right? It's like, yes, we know each other. It was such a joy to see him. This was, I can't remember. I think in March or April of this past year. And I was like, oh my God, dude, you're in as well. And it was just great to connect. And I felt some kinship. I was like, oh, it's cool that we're both running in circles. And more importantly, Bridge Funding's annual meeting was in San Francisco. I'm like, dude, we can finally meet. I'm so amped for us to finally meet. And he was giving me this whole like, oh, I don't know, I have to get from Puerto Rico. It's not as easy for me just to go out as you. I have to make a whole thing of it. I don't know if I have time. I was like, you paid the money. You got in. Like, this is the thing. Why don't you go? And I was just razzing him. I was like, you just don't want to hang out with me. I get it. and that was my, I don't know why. That's my favorite story. I thought you guys only had good GPs. What is he doing here? Those are my favorite stories. That was my most recent favorite story to tell. I think my other favorite story to tell, and I think you'll probably hear this from other people in the ecosystem when, Ethan Austin from Outside Ventures put this on LinkedIn as well, which is exactly my experience. Anytime you meet a LATAM founder, I'm super interested in. And like, I'm like, you talk with the founder, like, oh yeah, like we started our fundraise, and like, it's like we had some really good and interesting meetings from first. Is like, go get it, Ali from First Checks. Yeah, how'd you know? I'm like, God damn it, that guy always finds deals like, we've been talking about 3 to 6 months before. I was like, of course you have. Of course you have. There isn't a deal in LATAM that we were interested in the pre-seed world. Like, and Ethan wrote this on, he's like, yeah, he's always in there before us. I was like, how does he do it? It's so annoying. It's not annoying because he's awesome and he's an awesome investor. So it isn't, he lives, breathes that. So it didn't surprise us, but it was just, that's my funny. It was like, yeah, let me guess. Ali from First Checks. Like, yeah, how did you know him? You know him? I was like, yeah, I know him. And so those are my two favorite stories to tell about Ali. Yeah, up to the last minute. I'm using my iPhone as my phone, but I was just going to pull up WhatsApp. We were just trading notes on a deal and valuations. We were just talking about valuations. We saw the world the same way. Like, we wanted real founders who had good businesses. We were both, I'd like to think, miserly or value driven in how we looked at things. Yeah, I got this deal. Like it was a marketplace deal, must be. Is like, they have this much GMV and it's a proper valuation. Let me just do this intro for you. I probably should find out who that is and finish that intro. That didn't happen, but he was just always that. I mean, those are my stories. Let me get back on message. Ribbing him about being a bad GP in front of Bridge is my favorite story to tell because it just happened. Talking with the LATAM founder, be like, let me guess, you talked to Ali. It's like, I just want to build a t-shirt that says that. And then the story that's hanging in my unfinished WhatsApp group, what chat with him is, oh yeah, I'm going to introduce you to this person. It's a good fit for you. And so those are my 3 stories I'd like to tell.
What stood out to you about Ali and what was his impact on the ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, shit. I'll start with the left brain stuff, right? Like he's obviously just such a champion for LATAM, an unlikely champion. And I was the Asian guy that ran the HBCU Founders Fund Accelerator. So you're an Indian guy who likes LATAM. I was like, yeah, we get it. So, I think the things that he just was such a voracious champion of sensible, value-driven deals and advocating for LATAM's place on the investing map. That's the left brain part of it. The right brain part of it is just he's the most generous person I ever met. And I can't believe I'm crying. Like, I've never met him in person. It is shocking to me that he, like everyone you talk to, I'm sure everyone you talk to has this aim. Like, he's just the most generous person. He's just the most generous person. He's just the most, I mean, and so that's what I think he does, especially in the world of solo GPs and why people say they don't back solo G and all this stuff that we're all compete. I mean, that was never his vibe. And I mean, he's a real one and it sucks.
Yeah. No, you're spot on with that. I think everyone, including myself, like one of my first impressions of him was he's incredibly generous, just great to get along with. Like within the first, I think 20 minutes of meeting him, he invited me along to an event that he was going to.
Totally.
And we ended up spending the rest of the week together at a tech week. So yeah, he literally just told me, he was like, hey, you're hopping my Uber. Let's go.
And I think that's one of the reasons I'm so broken up because I never had a chance to do that. We've only done it virtually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that. I wanted to hop in an Uber and drink mezcal with him. No.
Next up, we have Andres Cano, founder and GP at Pygma. Andres, how did you first meet Ali?
Well, the first time that I met Ali was like any other founder pitching at him. You didn't know if he was excited or not excited. But at the end, he became our first investor at Pygma.
Do you have any memories or stories of Ali that you'd like to share?
Yes. The relationship that we built with Ali was someone that was 100% a giver. So for me and for the Pygma community, we really recall a lot was when he was our advisor, right? So we have a session that we were thinking what to do with Pygma. We have several options. We're like doing a very stupid idea to expand to Europe or to double down in Latin America, starting as well and the next move to Brazil. Or the other one is just staying with the diaspora of the Latinos, right? So I know this is not like a funny story or anything, but it's very meaningful in the way that someone that is so smart actually gave us the lights of what's Pygma today, right? If you actually see our thesis in the way that we focus on the Latinos was because he actually gave us the right advice in the right time, right? So having those 30 minutes with him, like he didn't talk that much for 20 minutes, but the 10 minutes that he actually speak up was like a no-brainer for us. And that's actually the story that I have in my mind is giving us the right advice to actually take the right direction in the moment that we needed the most. You know what's funny? Cause most of the time we used to do a lot of intros to him, right? So the first thing that I always say to a founder is don't worry if the conversation went pretty bad. Cause it's going to be a conversation without feeling. So at the end, it is, I don't know, it's weird. Whenever you talk to him, you don't know what's going on. But when you have a tequila or two tequilas with him, you see the brightness inside of him.
Yeah, I definitely saw that at Andres last year during the tech week. So what stood out to you about Ali, and what was his impact on the ecosystem in LATAM?
I think it was his obsession for the region, right? It's weird when you see Ali Jamal and strong American guy that understands emerging markets pretty well, but his obsession with Latin America stood out, right? So why do I admire him the most? And is a lot of investors, they think that they are like their first check, and they aren't. So one of the common questions that I do to many of, I don't know, pre-seed investors is like, how early can you go, right? And for Ali, that actually, the name of first check actually makes sense because he basically is the real first check, right? It doesn't matter if you have the signaling. It doesn't matter anything. He can actually move forward, being the first one without not giving nothing. So his impact is huge because I don't know. If you find Latin America, most of the time investors, I'm sorry, especially for true investors, they will go with, I don't know, strong signally if you are part of the Rappi Mafia, if you are not part of the Rappi Mafia, or it doesn't matter. Is he really knows how to actually find the right deals at the best terms, and going forward, we not the need to have someone co-investing with him. Of course, he is like one of the greatest co-investors in Latam by far. But what I really think of his impact is being the first mover in a region where nobody is the first mover. And another thing is just because it just popped into my mind is he became the first super angel investor, to be honest with you, before having his fund, right? And being that angel is not just for the money, but also because of his smart money, right? When you jump into a conversation with Ali Jamal, is yeah, you can have access to capital, but you're guy having as well the smartest guy in the table, right? So any introductions that Ali does for you are the right introduction. They're not like just like guessing to destiny what's gonna happen. It was
Yeah.
like very creative with a great mentality and growth. Long story short is he's more than just cash. He is like the real angel investor that gives you the cash and the smart
Yeah.
advice. And another thing is talking again about his real impact, right? He's a very strong believer of the accelerator model. For us, he was our first investors, and I think we take it very proud, right? We haven't seen another fund that has been invested by Ali Jamal. We had the opportunity to have it. But he also not just invested in Pygma, he also invested a lot of time in other programs. He was very active in Parallel. He was very active for the Founder Institute in Mexico. He was a super open person that just wanted to give to the community. So he's the biggest non-Latino of Latam.
Next up, we have Ihar Mahaniok, managing partner at Geek Ventures. Ihar, how did you first meet Ali?
So I got to know about Ali through AngelList syndicates, right? Way before I even started my fund, I was active participant in syndicates on AngelList, and his syndicate was one of the most interesting and active ones. And I spoke with him about his strategy in a few companies. And then a little later, he joined the same program that I graduated from, a VC Lab. And he became one of the prominent alumni of VC Lab. And I remember that he was starting his actual fund, Light Pool Fund, as opposed to his previous syndicate, several months after me. And we spoke a lot about the minutiae and operations of starting the fund and fundraising. Yeah.
Do you have any memories or stories of Ali that you'd like to share?
He mostly spent time on Zoom and on chat. So he was always one of the most unusual VCs because from perspective of where he is, because he was in Puerto Rico, which is not typical. And then I remember we had a really good time in Miami during Art Basel, where a bunch of VCs, emerging VCs that we both knew came together, and we were going to this networking events and complaining to each other how there is a bunch of GPs and very few LPs over there. Yeah, and but more importantly is like all the a lot of my memories are all about discussing specific companies and how I was always interested in the co-investing with him, given how amazing early he comes in, but with his focus on much more on LATAM and my focus on US, it was hard to find the intersection. Yeah.
And what stood out to you about Ali, and what was his impact on the ecosystem?
So the most unique thing about Ali is how early and how high conviction he could build with founders, and how right he was most of the time. There is this story among emerging manager ecosystem is that Ali is the only one who can find future YC grads at 2 or 3 million valuation, and then they go through YC and raise at 30. And he showed that it's feasible to make a $2 million or $4 million venture fund by buying lots of ownership for 50K or 100K checks. And also shown that it's possible to pick among countless of founders who are pre-seed, who didn't have any investors yet, and pick the best ones out of them. Of course, it's way easier to deal with founders who have traction or founders who have a full rounds. He was always in this like green field of very early founders who didn't get any investments. And he was very true to his mission. First Check Ventures was his name of the fund, and he was actually making first checks. And he was also the perfect example of value add. I don't know where he found the time, but he was able to talk to a lot of founders for deal flow, but he also was very available and spent a lot of time to help founders he already invested in. And that's why his NPS among founders was huge, right? Founders kept recommending him to other founders. And that's why he was able to negotiate valuations that other VCs find hard to make possible. And especially, I think his ecosystem effect is on LATAM founders, right? Because he was very squarely focused on LATAM founders, both in the US and in Central America and in South America, right? But with his focus, he helped them, right? But he was also happy to help them to get into the US ecosystem, right? Happy to get them to YC, happy to get them to other US VCs, happy that them to get to that proper US valuation. So that's very helpful.
Up next, we have Martin Tobias, managing partner at Incisive Ventures. Martin, how did you first meet Ali?
Hi, Cyrus. Thanks for having me. And I love that you're doing this. Ali was a really special guy. I met Ali back in the day before we both started our venture funds, when we were both running SPVs on AngelList. And so I had an SPV. I had one of the largest syndicates on AngelList, and he had a pretty active one too. And we co-invested together. And then when he said he was thinking about starting a fund, I helped him get introduced to the Desal Group, where he ended up going to start his fund. And then I became an LP in his fund, and we started doing more investments together. And I invited him to this poker group and we played a lot of poker together. And at conferences, we loved to hang out and laugh. And the thing I remember most about Ali is that he was always up for anything. Like, he was one of those guys. When he was starting investing, he'd call me and say, "How do I start a venture fund?" I'd help him do that. But he was always learning, always up for anything. I mentioned to him that one time that I played a lot of poker, and he's, "I like poker." And I'm like, "Then you should join these VCs and founders in this poker group." And so he started playing poker with us. He would say yes to basically anything. And one of the reasons I became an LP in his fund was also because as I was looking for deals in Latin America, basically every team I met, I said, "Do you know Ali Jamal?" And they're like, "Of course I know Ali Jamal." He knew fucking everybody. And I don't know how he did it, but I think it was in part because he was one of these guys that was, he'd go to every party, he'd go to every event. He's a really personable guy, and he was up for anything. That was Ali Jamal, up for anything. I would like to add a little bit of a regret. The way I found out that Ali had died is that I'm an LP in his fund. one of his companies that he had invested in was, and the reason I became an LP is that he invested at the idea stage. Like, I invest in 3 guys and a dog. He invests in 1 guy and no fucking dog earlier. And I was like, okay, you find them, but then when they get a little bit of traction, I want to see them. And I'd been tracking this one company that he'd invested in. And when they were raising, he gave me the referral. I started digging in. I called him a couple times. I liked it. He sent me some more information. I had some background checks. Anyway, so on Friday of last week, I committed to the thing and I wired them and I sent him a WhatsApp message and I said, "Hey, Ali, stoked to be investing with you." And I didn't hear back from him. And I was really, it was weird because I normally would get a response from him all the time. And then I found out on Monday that he had passed away. And I'm really sad to miss celebrating some further co-investments with him and some fruition of this 5-year friendship turning into some extra business stuff. I'm gonna miss celebrating wins with Ali.
Next up, we have Ivan Montoya, managing partner at NuMundo Ventures. Ivan, how did you first meet Ali?
I first met Ali through investing, right? And for those folks who know me and work with me, I'm very much a network-driven investor, right? Building relationships across the ecosystem, and Ali was part of that, right? So I had been investing as an angel for maybe about a year. I did a mix of direct and indirect, and on the indirect, I was doing stuff on AngelList. And all of a sudden, I see this thing about a company in Venezuela called Yummy. And I remember thinking to myself, this is crazy. And I go in deeper and I'm like, wow, the founder came from Postmates. I'm like, who the hell came up with this? And I look and it was First Check Ventures. I see Ali. I reach out to him. I ask him some questions. And that's how the relationship started. And what was very interesting is over the next few years, it was just this kind of circle of working with Ali. I probably invested in a few of his stuff that he did on AngelList, including a company in Colombia called Litio. I introduced him. It's always hard with Ali because he would talk to everybody. So sometimes we would get into these discussions. Well, I talked to him a year ago. I'm like, okay. But Cashin was a company that I invested in Peru. First thing I thought was like, hey, we should reach out to Ali and this guy, Peter Livingston, who also knew Ali a lot and helped Ali a lot on AngelList. He invested in that. Years later, I invested in this company called One Car Now, and I was trying to get Ali in. Ali had a great big syndicate, and I actually go and visit him in Puerto Rico. So he and I got to know each other over the years, and whenever he would be in the Bay Area for a reunion for his class, I'd have coffee with him in downtown Palo Alto. And then years later, I would be in Puerto Rico. One Car Now was doing their pre-seed raise. And I go visit him. He had just moved there, and I'd heard the whole story about how he ended up going to Puerto Rico. And but anyway, we can go into deeper, but that was the origin story of how I met Ali.
Do you have any memories or stories of Ali that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think one, seeing him at his new home in Puerto Rico was fun because he and I would talk at various times over the years, and he had lived in Bogota. And he liked it, but he thought it wasn't his vibe. Then he went to Mexico City, and I thought, oh, he loves Mexico City. And then he tells me, no, I'm leaving. I'm like, why are you leaving? And Ali was very frugal. And so the tax situation and whatever in Puerto Rico is really appealing. And hey, it's an adventure. So he moves to Puerto Rico. As luck would have it, I was going to be in Puerto Rico. And I'm like, hey, Ali, are you around? I'm like, yeah. So I remember I walk, and I don't know, Puerto Rico's got some nice parts. It's also got, you just don't know. I was new to Puerto Rico. So I'm walking over, we meet, and it was surreal because so much during the pandemic was done via Zoom. To be with Ali physically was just fun. I don't know if I'd call him a gentle giant, but he's definitely had this gentle nature to him, and he was a bigger guy. And it was fun to be there with him, and a little bit surreal because we did so much virtually for so long, and it was great. It was great to spend time with him. I'll mention one thing about his impact on the ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
I think Ali, one of the things that stood out to me about Ali was he was a machine, right? So if I talk to a founder, I'm like, oh, who else have you talked to? For sure, they talked to Ali, right? So I think he took his job very seriously. I think both his brand, but his business model was being that super, super early check. And there are not a lot of people like that. And I think ecosystems need that. So he's going to be sorely missed for a bunch of reasons, for who he was, but I think his role in the ecosystem, right? Here, I live in the Bay Area. There are some people who will do that, right? They got the capital, they write that first check, they help the founders get going. That was a lot more rare in LATAM. It is rare in LATAM. And so obviously it's super big tragedy to lose him, and he's going to be missed on many levels. But to end on more of a fun note about how tight this community is, so there's a lawyer that I love. I think he's doing great work. His name is Paul Navarro. He works for Perkins Coie. He leads their LATAM group. He's the lawyer for one of my most important investments, a company called Cachea. So we've gotten to know each other very well. Turns out Paul was in the same sophomore dorm as Ali at Stanford. And so I'm talking to Paul about Columbia Tech Week, getting ready for it, if he's going to sponsor the event we're going to host and all this. And then we start talking about Ali, and I find out like they were friends from a long time ago. And so, Ali's definitely going to be missed, but not forgotten.
Next up, we have Juan Sebastian Jaramillo, CEO and co-founder of Pari. Juan, how did you first meet Ali?
Well, it was curious because I first followed him in LinkedIn, and then I sent him a DM and he accepted, and I told him hey, I'm raising and do you want to meet? And we got into a Zoom call, and it was history from there. He invested in Pari at the end, and we became great friends. As I've mentioned, as Ali was first my investor, then he became my friend and a really good friend of mine.
Do you have any memories or stories of Ali that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think that Ali he was a big guy, a massive guy, and he hated hugs. So I was always he was trying just to shake my hand, and I was like, no, dude, I need a hug of yours. And he was always like, oh, Wancho, don't hug me. I don't like it. I'm like, dude, if you're in LATAM, if you're investing in LATAM, this is how we do it in LATAM. He just laughed at me, and he was an amazing guy. We really clicked as investors and friends.
And you were also sharing a couple stories before we started this recording about your experience hanging out with him and texting him during the race. We'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I saw him in January and February. We grabbed some Cuban food out in Miami last time in February. And it was great. He was telling me that he was raising his fund and that was going good, great. Around April, I looked up for him hey, man, I'm putting up my seed round. Should we get on a Zoom? And I don't know, I started pitching him and he was not on 100%, And and I stopped giving my pitch and I'm like, dude, are you okay? Because he was even coughing and I felt something was not right with him. I stopped my pitch and I'm like, dude, if you want to take a minute or something, we can do that. We can do this sometime else. It was no. I said I just closed the round and or the fund, and I was exhausted, and it's been I'm just chilling here. So I just left it there, and then we got back on a call. He was yeah, I heard him better, so I I didn't push it anymore with him, and it was so unfortunate to hear when he died. I was in shock. So yeah, it was really hard.
What stood out to you about Ali and what was his impact on the ecosystem or even on Pari and yourself?
I told you a while ago, he believed first in me as a human being, and then he believed on the business. He said, I know the business is going to thrive, but I'm investing in you. Those were his initial words. And and we made a round. Through AngelList, we got $250,000 investment. Then we got another round for another 50,000 from Ali. And he put so much love in what he did, and I recognized the great human being he was. Yeah, and he became my friend slash investor slash advisor slash. I was needing his big hugs. And so first, as a human being, I think that Ali sees like the type of people he invests first, like you as a human being, and afterwards, I think that's massive what he did for LATAM is that he believed in like pre-seeds, seed rounds, like when you're just like barely having a pitch deck, barely having an MVP, barely having numbers, like or good numbers, and he's like investing in I believe in you, I believe in your business, I believe in you as a human being, I believe and I think that's massive. And last time I talked to him, I think he had invested in over 100 companies in Latin. So that's massive. I don't know the exact number, if it's 105 or 195, but investing in more than 100 companies out here in LATAM, it's like just massive. And it talks a lot about how he saw LATAM as a massive market with major opportunities to invest in Latino founders and LATAM market, As I mentioned, like it was a leap of faith. He's like, dude, your numbers are like so low. You barely have a pitch deck. I trust you. And I think we're going to make it. And probably, yeah. And as you mentioned, like First Check Ventures, that's his name. And I think that's what he's leaving, his legacy here in LATAM, because obviously he's going to be missed, but he helped a lot of us like thrive in this venture world,
Juan, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your memories.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you taking the time in creating this podcast for him and in his memory. And that's of great value and talks a lot of good things about you. So thanks also for doing that.
I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed hearing those stories of Ali as much as I did. I want to take a moment to talk about a few memories I have of Ali. So I've recounted this story a couple of times to the folks that I interviewed for this podcast, but I first came across Ali at least 3 years ago, when he was running his syndicate. And I remember I never actually reached out until maybe like a year and a half ago or so, when I had shot him a cold DM on LinkedIn. And I pretty much just said like, hey, I love what you're doing. I would love to connect and, maybe we can hop on a call. Also, I have this potential founder that could fit your thesis and they're raising right now. And the only response I got from Ali on LinkedIn was send me the deck. And I just remember thinking like at that moment, I was like, wow, he's incredibly short and to the point. I just completely disregarded every other part of my message and just asked for the deck. And I believe I like shot him back some information on that raise. But we didn't really speak beyond that. And then I remember at Columbia Tech Week, and this was maybe 6 months, let's call it, later, in August of 2024, at Columbia Tech Week in Bogota. I was actually, funny enough, in a live podcast in this massive auditorium for Yvonne Montoya and NuMundo Ventures. And as I was watching Yvonne and these three founders on stage, I was sitting in the back because the room was just absolutely packed, and I came late from like another event. And I remember seeing Ali walk in, and he came in and sat down right in front of me at this event. So naturally, I was like, I've been trying to connect with this guy for so long. I quickly came over to him and I was like, hey, you're Ali, right? He was like, yes. I'm like, hey, I'm Cyrus. I shot you a message like a while back. Let's chat after this event. And he was like, yeah, sounds good. And after the event, we did end up connecting. We were chatting. He introduced me to like some other folks that he knew. And I ended up keeping in touch with them. And then we went outside of the auditorium and I introduced him to two other folks I had met during Tech Week. And mind you, I think this was like probably the first day or two of Tech Week. I'm pretty sure it was the first day. So like a Monday. And we go outside this auditorium after he meets the two other friends that I have. Then he goes like, hey, like, what are you doing after this? And I was like, I don't know, like probably getting a bite to eat. I'm really not sure. He was like, do you want to go to another event? And I was like, oh, sure. Yeah. I was like, just send me the address. Like I'll call an Uber and I'll meet you there. He's like, no. Like I have an Uber that's coming here right now. He's like, just hop in the Uber with me. And I was just like, are you sure? Because mind you, like I had just met him maybe like 15 minutes ago and I only had like 15 minutes of talking to him and he immediately invited me and these two other folks that I was with to an event and to hop in the Uber with him. And so that's exactly what we did. We ended up hopping in this tiny Uber, going to this other event, enjoying that event. And then afterwards, we ended up chatting for a little bit and kind of parting ways. But I got his number and we were just texting throughout Tech Week about like different events that he was going to and, you know, different topics. And I remember that I had booked a flight to return home on Thursday. So I was only going from, I think, Sunday to through Thursday. And there were a couple events that were actually going on Friday. And there was one main event that was going on Saturday, which was folks were going to take a shuttle out to Daniel's finca outside of Bogota. And this is Daniel from Pygma. And Ali was like, yeah, man, like this is a great event. Like I go every year. My parents are coming. It's good. And I was like, damn, you know, like that kind of sucks. I actually am going to be leaving on Thursday. I was like, you know, I don't know if it's worth changing my flight. And he was like, no, you should consider changing your flight to go to this event. And so that kind of stuck with me throughout Tech Week. And I think it came down to, I believe it was a Wednesday night. I was at an event for Story Card. And I remember sitting in this booth while Story was obviously announcing some big announcement, which I clearly was not paying attention to because at that point in time, Ali had convinced me to actually change my flight from Thursday to Sunday morning so that I could attend this event on Saturday. And so I ended up sitting there paying a couple $100 extra to change my flight because Ali kept telling me, he kept texting me, he's like, no, man, you should go. Like, it's really fun. And so here I was Saturday morning waiting for folks to come and board the shuttle. And Ali and I ended up on the same shuttle, sitting kind of close to each other. And yeah, it was a great time. I really enjoyed it. It was probably the highlight of the entire Tech Week. And I'm really glad that I listened to Ali and that he convinced me to go. Because it's actually shaped a lot of where like my life is at right now. And, you know, I was able to build, you know, solid relationships with Daniel and with Andres from Pygma. I actually finally got to ride Paso Fino for the first time as well through that event and met a lot of other great people as well through that one event. And the highlight of it all too was not even just that event, but after that event, which Ali also hyped up quite a bit. And after that event, we all went to Andres, which is this steakhouse in Bogota, and it's incredible. And it's like a party in a steakhouse. And we all go there, and that's where, you know, I met his parents again. Like we ended up actually sitting down next to each other. So I was sitting down next to Ali and his parents, and we were chatting a bit. And yeah, I mean, it was incredible. And so I remember after Tech Week, I ended up keeping in touch with Ali, and we were talking about various topics. But at one point, I was talking to him about bringing him on to do a podcast with us because I would love to learn a little bit more about, you know, First Check Ventures and his syndicate and everything that he was doing, because it was pretty evident that like he knew everyone within LATAM and all the founders like highly respected him. And so it was earlier in 2025, I believe it was probably like early spring that I texted him again and I was like, hey man, like would love to bring you on for a podcast. Like, can we schedule this soon? And he mentioned that he was in the middle of his raise and it was, you know, it was pretty stressful and it was, he was somewhat close to closing it out. And he was like, hey, can we just like hold off on this conversation for like another few months, you know, maybe until like July or August. And then, you know, we can talk about this again and try to get this scheduled. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, man. Sounds good. Just let me know when you're ready. And then it wasn't even a few months later that I found out that he had passed away at the beginning of July, which is incredibly sad to lose him. And so, yeah, he's just like one of the kindest folks that you'll ever meet. And, you know, I can definitely corroborate the stories that you've heard on this podcast about him just like on a whim, just like, hey, let's go do this. And yeah, I'm glad that I was finally able to meet him before he passed away. So rest in peace, Ali.